start things here. Let's call to order today's Ways and Means Committee meeting of Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022. Would everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'd like to please remind everybody that this meeting is being transmitted live via video stream. The public can find a link to this video stream by visiting the Orange County website, www.orangecountygov.com, clicking on the tab for the legislature and locating today's meeting on the calendar. Remember to please silence your cell phones, tablets, or other electronic devices. The microphones here are very sensitive and will pick up all the cross chatter that's in this room. At this time, roll call, Carrie Ann?
Nagustakis.
Present.
Russia.
Here.
O'Donnell.
Here.
Hine.
Here.
Tortel. Here. Sadoo.
Here.
Cheney.
Here.
Benton.
Here.
All present.
Okay, great. Okay, first up is Darcy Miller, Commissioner of Social Services and Mental Health. This is the request supplemental appropriation awarded from the New York State OASAS for jail-based medication-assisted treatment services for inmates. These funds will pass through the mental health to Orange County Jail. OCJ, the jail, is in current contract with WellPath to provide MAT services to inmates, treatment plans, and linkage to care upon release. This is in the amount of $170,000. Motion in a second, please.
Second.
Sal, O'Donnell. Welcome.
Hi, how are you? Thank you. So the Department of Mental Health requested these funds, applied for these funds from the New York State Office of OASIS. We received the funds, and we are currently working on putting a memorandum of understanding together in cooperation with the Sheriff's Office. County attorneys are supporting our efforts, and then they will make a change to the contract they have with WellPath that will allow them to receive these funds to cover some of the cost of mandated medication-assisted treatment, including all three forms: Suboxone, methadone, and Vivitrol for all inmates who are opioid addicted.
Okay, questions from committee members? Nothing? Hearing none, all in favor as presented? Aye. Opposed? Carried?
I got a question.
Sure, Mr. O'Donnell.
So there was an incident last week, 10 days ago at St. Luke's with a young boy, I don't know what, he's 14, 15 years old, with mental health issues. But unfortunately, and I spoke to Darcy about this, but I want to make the whole committee aware of this in all legislature. So that young man was kept in St. Luke's emergency room for 9 days in the emergency room because they couldn't place him. So what can we do as a county to try to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Well, I wish we could say that it will never happen again, but unfortunately it's happening. It's happening in all of our hospitals here in Orange County. It's happening across the state. So it really has to do with the availability of children's inpatient psychiatric beds. And the state is responsible for having enough beds to accommodate the need. And there are surges when there is more need than there are beds. And then there are times when there are more beds than there is need. So for them to find the balance and make it right is pretty complex. We have been advocating because it feels like it happens in our hospitals way too often. And we don't have any inpatient children's units in Orange County. So we rely on private hospitals, public hospitals across the region to accommodate our young people when they need that assistance.
So
Fortunately,
who does have inpatient?
Who does have inpatient? Zakers, Westchester Medical, St. Vincent's, Rockland Psychiatric Center. So again, outside of our county, correct, yes.
Okay, so would sending a letter to Albany do any good or?
There was a large report that was put out recently and published by the Attorney General that made the case for not having enough inpatient psychiatric beds for children across the state, as well as looking at the outpatient services that have been medicated and rolled out differently for children with more difficulty for accessing them. So I think the case has been made very strongly, and I would support a case if you wanted to put something together to put to the state that we need to have the right level of care, not just for inpatient psychiatric centers, but the right level of care for children across the system. St. Louis didn't bring to your attention, but they had a gentleman in their hospital with OPWDD residential needs that was there for, I think, 33 days. And we just, the state just found him a replacement this past Friday. So it happens.
Right, thanks. So now have a
She's writing
conversation.
down already.
Can I follow very
She's writing right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. So it doesn't sound like you're involved in that search. It's the hospital. And if it is the hospital, did they contact you at all? And at what point did they contact you? Where within the 9 days or 33 days or whatever it is that you know? And do you have any role in trying to find that bag?
The hospital contacted me. I believe I had the call with them on Thursday. They contacted our children's service director on Wednesday of last week. So the news must have been there about 7 or 8 days. And then I got involved on the 9th day. We are outpatient services. Local government unit is responsible for outpatient services. We appreciate our hospitals. We work very closely with them. They're important across our continuum. But it is really the state office role. So they'll call the state office of mental health regional office. Then they call me, but I come in on the call to really advocate on behalf of the hospital, but as importantly, to advocate on behalf of our residents. The last thing we want is a 14-year-old in a highly stimulating emergency room and probably struggling with mental health issues for 9 days.
So it took them how long before they contacted you? 6 days, you said?
7 days before our office was contacted.
So it sounds like one of the major problems is these hospitals taking a long time to get contact with some people that might have
Right.
additional help.
Well, they call the regional office of mental health pretty quickly to try to get them, because they are the ones who
Yeah.
manage
Okay.
the availability of inpatient beds across the state. So they do call them and they do try to get involved. Disturbing for me in this situation is not only were there not beds, but there were some hospitals who had beds who said that the acuity of the youth was too high to accept them. So an emergency room is not a good option under those circumstances. So I made that case pretty strongly.
Thank you.
So what can you, sorry, go ahead, Elwood.
So just to clarify, we do not have any mental health beds for children in Orange County at all.
Correct. Correct. Yes, we never have. Inpatient children's units are, first of all, you have to go by, utilization. And then even if you have the right utilization, the large number of beds you'd have to have for it to be financially viable for a hospital is pretty great. So it's difficult. Even though our need is important every time we need it, there's not been enough for a hospital to make the case that in a business model that they would have inpatient psychiatric beds for children. We've advocated many times. I remember when Valley View first, downsized. We actually did a tour over there in consideration of hoping maybe Arms Acres or somebody would come in and have children's beds here in Orange County, but it has never worked out through all of the years.
I think that's something, if we're going to take this further, we should all consider advocating for, because not only are we disenfranchising our children, but making it harder for their families to be with them if they're going outside of our county, outside of our area, when that child needs their parent and their family at the most.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you. So I think you mentioned to me that you got some type of community services now? Well, what is that?
Yes, so, we have a multitude of community services for children in our county. In particular, this child will go through a single point of access for additional high needs services, so care management supports, as well as a family support person and an emergency response team that can go out to the house and support the family. There's clinically, it's understandable how it got to where it got, and I don't want to share details, obviously it's
Right.
great and confidential. And then for the stabilization period, in order for it to remain that way, we want to be sure there's clinical support in the house. So this is not typical behavior for this youth to have gotten to that level of acuity. So we hope that having that hospital stay, even though it was an emergency room, the staff at St. Luke's were very supportive of this youth and the family. And we hope that we can continue his stabilization at home. He did end up going home.
Right. So the care management, do we contact them or?
Yeah. Yes,
like
we
every
assist-
other day or ask them?
that's, yes. In fact, we are, in addition, I don't know the outcome though, to be honest
Right,
with
yeah,
you.
I know, I don't want to know.
Yeah, no,
that.
no,
I wanna
but
know what
we-
care management
we had-
means.
Care management is a person that's assigned to the family to assist with putting a care plan in place and to provide additional supports to the family. We also had check-in calls made to the family over the weekend, just to be sure that they had everything they needed for him to be supported. And there was a period of time where he wasn't on his medication, being back on his medication. We hope all of that together, and no news is good news. So if I haven't heard anything, that means that they're managing.
All right.
But it's very complex.
Thank you.
yes.
Thanks, Jim.
And thank you for your advocacy on
Oh.
behalf of you.
Okay, so I forget, did we vote on this yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Opening up a hospital for kids.
Yes.
We
Let's
did,
vote
we
on
voted,
that.
we voted on the main thing.
We voted on the first.
Right,
item.
okay. Thank you
We're
very
good? All
much.
right, thank you so much.
All right, next up, Mike. This is a request supplemental appropriation into the operating budget year for into operating budget year 4 funds for the Migrant Health Services Program from the New York State Department of Health for the period 10/1/22 to 9/30/23. The purpose of this grant is to provide funding for the public health outreach and education services to the migrant seasonal worker population throughout Orange County. This is in the amount of $59,940.
So moved.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
As you said, these are fourth-year funds, the amount of $59,000. Purpose of the grant is to provide access to high-quality, culturally and linguistically appropriate health and social support services, as well as enabling services such as translation and transportation, to reduce barriers across and to improve the health status of migrant and seasonal workers throughout the county. The grant primarily funds a part-time employee as well as a chargeback of the full-time employee. And beyond that, just specialty payments for distributing funds or distributing information to seasonal workers.
Okay. Questions from committee members? Mr. Paduk?
Yeah, thanks. I'm looking at your request.
Mhm.
Looks like a lot of that stuff is for different supplies and stuff, so that cuts down on the ability to reach out.
Are
somewhat.
you referring to the office supplies or?
All these factor in for quite a bit of the money that we have.
So a lot of that,
That part cuts down on how much we can actually do then.
well, no, the specialty payments, the specialty materials, I should say, sorry, that is, my understanding is that's kind of what we use to print out, you know, and materials, give out materials, and kind of interact with the migrant workers, so.
All right, but I mean, in this grant, that amount of that money, if we made extra, let's say, we had more people out working with the migrants, right? And we could, possible that we gave you additional funding.
I suppose,
I
but,
mean, you have plenty of supplies, right,
well,
is there more supplies than?
Well, there's materials
people
that-
you,
there's materials that need to be purchased for the actual program itself, that we actually have to work with the employees with, or work with the migrant workers with. It's more than just the employees that we hire through this. There's actual stuff that we actually have to purchase and distribute out to the
You
population.
use all of them.
Yeah, we try to use every single penny of it, if we can.
Yeah, the employee, the one here for the base salary and the fringe benefit cost, they need materials to do their work
Mhm.
and the program. Mr. Nagusakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this worker has been here before. It's the same worker, I assume, or do we have the employee? Do we know who he is?
Yeah,
Because I assume so, because he's under health insurance, it's a single plan. So we know that he has a single plan.
yeah,
Otherwise, it'd be well over 20,000.
right, of course.
Okay, just want to double check it.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor as presented?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Also, I forgot to mention that the chairwoman of the legislature is here.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. All right, next up, county attorney. Rick was yesterday.
Rick.
Yeah, he's not here today,
Not
so
here today.
this is
All right.
quite extensive here. So this is the resolution number 120 of 2021. Approved sale of certain property owned by the county of Orange and located in Newburgh, New York, known as 48 Grand Street, section block and lot 31-18, 54 Grand Street, section block and lot 31-13.2, and 62 Grand Street, section block and lot 31-19. to FSH Holding LLC in accordance with local law 12 of 2020. The county thereafter entered into an agreement of purchase and sale with FSH Holding dated June 15th, 2021, which is the contract, wherein the county agreed to sell 48, 54, and 62 Grand Street, Newburgh, New York to FSH Holding LLC for the sum of $1,300,000. FSH Holding LLC has now requested that the county agree to assignment of the contract from FSH Holding LLC as the purchaser to Grand Street Newburgh Property Company LLC as purchaser, wherein the county will then sell 48, 54, and 62 Grand Street, Newburgh, New York to Grand Street Newburgh Property Company LLC as purchaser for the same sum of $1,300,000. FSH Holding LLC is the sole member of Grand Street Property Company LLC, which was formed for the purpose of taking possession and title to the properties located at 48, 54, and 62 Grand Street, Newburgh, New York. Motion in a second, please. Brescia, I'll second.
Okay, I
Welcome.
apologize. That was me writing that whole thing. Sorry about that. It's confusing. So there's a contract with FSH Holding LLC, and FSH had put in that contract the right to assign to an entity controlled by the purchaser. So now they've come to us. We're scheduled for a closing now September 30th. And they've come to us and asked if we could transfer to an entity controlled by them, which was just formed, well, actually it was formed a little while ago, Grand Street Newburgh Property Company LLC, and the sole member of that LLC is FSH Holding LLC.
So for whatever reason it is that they find it beneficial to just transfer it to a basically the same
Separate LLC.
separate entity, but the same people.
Yes, correct.
All right. Mr. Hines.
So as I recall in that contract, we put in there that they can't flip this to anybody
We
else.
have a declaration. They will be signing.
Is that
So
still part of this?
that is still part of it, and that will be now signed by the new company at the time of closing. Yes.
That's the only concern I had, was that
Mhm.
they were doing this to avoid that piece.
That's what I was doing with that
That will be
yesterday.
nice.
I know, I just want to make sure.
Good, good question.
Mr. Paduk?
Yeah, I asked that question yesterday too. Mr. Golden said they've had a bunch of extensions, right, before,
Oh, yes.
and what's their issue? Is there an issue?
I don't know that there's necessarily an issue. They kept saying we want to do more testing. Their testing, she says, is done now. Their attorney said they're done. They're ready to go. The reason that we're not closing, we were looking to close by next week or early September, as soon as we got legislative approval on the assignment. Now she and her client are both going away for a couple of weeks. So then we'll close September 30th.
Because I asked also about doing work in there, due diligence work. or
They have not
something.
done work. They asked us if they could do work. Brian and I spoke with Brian Tisworth, and we went back to them and said, absolutely no work until you own
Own
the
it.
property. So all of the work or whatever they've been in there, and according to Brian, they were there a lot. So I agree with you. They were there a lot, but no work. It was just testing of whatever sort. They are getting, my understanding, IDA financing for it. But that's not part of our issue. We're having a cash closing.
So they had our permission to go in there because
We
we got
had our
issues in some
permission.
other places about people going onto our property that don't own it. Yesterday, we talked about.
Oh, no, the contract has the right, and there was a letter for them to go in. Yeah, yeah, that was all included in there.
Ms. Tortel?
Thank you, Michelle. The terms of how long before they could sell the property, because you said they couldn't flip the
Right.
property, but.
Yeah, I believe it's 5 or 10 years. I have, it's the declaration.
What terminology?
I have the declaration and I was just about to review. Okay, sorry, I apologize, right? It's right here. And I think it's 10 years that they have. So, and this will be a recorded document too. I apologize.
No, I was supposed to know that I couldn't find it.
I know, I was like, I read this briefly. I didn't prepare the contract either, so I do apologize. You couldn't find it either, 5 years. It's right
5
there.
years. Okay.
Right there. I thought it was 5. 10 would be nice, but I thought it was 5.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All
very
right,
much.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Mr. O'Donnell?
That goes from the date of the closing, right?
From the data closet.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor as presented? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Also, can you do some checking on us for the CAVE committee? I haven't asked in probably a couple months. Progression of the contract with Tilcon on the sale.
Oh, okay.
It's a bid.
It's a bid. It's a
Yeah.
bid.
It's a bid.
Yeah, it's not out there, no contract yet. It's a
Well,
bid.
can you give us an update for next month?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, because we asked Rick yesterday about it. He said, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared. I don't know. And it's that,
Okay,
you know, that's right. I haven't spoken to him about it, but
okay.
an update, please.
And the intent is for that update to be at the
CAVE committee also.
meeting.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Mr. Brooks. And Deanna. Okay, so 4A is request supplemental appropriation to the capital project budget for parks equipment. Upon approval, a new capital project will be created in the amount of $90,000. Funds to come from surplus. Motion in a second, please. O'Donnell, second. I'll second. Jim?
This is for the parks portion of our budget, and it is for Thomas Bull Memorial Park. It is to replace a Jacobson mower, which is over 10 years old. And the Jacobson mowers, we can no longer get parts for.
And all these projects are in addition to anything that is currently in the capital plan. They're all brand new. Just for
And
everything.
these are all the 2021 surplus additional
Correct.
projects that we already reviewed in detail.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor as presented? Aye. Opposed? Carried, thank you. B, resolution making an appropriation to the capital project budget in the amount of $925,000 for paving at various parks locations. Upon approval, a new capital project will be created. Motion in a second, please. O'Donnell, second. Benton,
Okay, this is for various paving projects that we plan on doing. The first one is the Heritage Trail, doing 10 miles of overlay from Goshen toward Harriman. Second would be the Winding Hills campsite. And third is at Thomas Bull, the maintenance garage, that location and around the maintenance buildings.
questions? Ms. Tortel.
You said towards Harmony, you got towards, here, are you going further down?
It's right on the line. It's about the airplane park, just beyond airplane.
Okay, by Airhead Park, so then that's not towards Harmony. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. C is resolution making an appropriation to the capital project budget in the amount of $550,000 for the replacement of playground equipment at various park locations. Upon approval, a new capital project will be created. Motion in a second, please. O'Donnell, second. Cheney.
The playground equipment is for replacing current playground equipment that is 20+ years old. These items have a lot of wear and tear. They constantly are in need of repairing. And we need to upgrade them along with upgrading our ADA compliant pieces.
Ms. Hotel.
Right, so this is the blacktop that really wasn't that planned. Usually when we get these requests, there's details. There was no details for the mower. I mean, I reviewed all this last night. There's hardly any details here. I mean, you're just saying B&H Visitor Center, $150,000, Winding Hills, $150,000, upgrade to TBMP playground equipment, $200,000. We've gone through this.
We discussed this in detail with about these projects as it relates to the surplus. These were supposed to be included last month, but something happened and that included this month, but all this was going over.
I don't recall seeing last month any playground equipment.
Now, this was in separate meetings that we met.
Okay, so again, this is a separate meeting. This is my first time looking at this, and I'm voting to spend $500,000 of the supplemental money. It would behoove you and us if we all had a little better idea of exactly where this money is going and not just throwing it and saying, oh, playground equipment. I know playground equipment is expensive, but
Can you get us an itemized list?
We worked off the list, I think, that the collective list that was
That list.
distributed.
Yeah, that was a list that was handed out quite some time ago.
I believe there was a couple of meetings, Katie,
That's correct.
right, that we reviewed.
Yes,
this.
yes. There was a leadership meeting that explained all of that. And as Bacchus said, it has been emailed more than once. And it was
I have that
probably
list,
about a month or 6 weeks ago when we first started to introduce this. And this was a long list. You can see it's the multi-coded chart there that we went off of. And most of the projects on that chart were passed last month through physical services as well as Ways and Means. And for some reason, the parks ones didn't get, and those were the ones that were kind of on the back page there.
so more of the details would be even that, I went through that, but that was 6 weeks ago.
Mhm.
Well,
When
the
we're looking at
information
it.
hasn't changed.
Yeah, you have time to review it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor as presented? Aye. Opposed? Carried? Thank you. All right, so D has been supplemented, let's call it. This is a request supplemental appropriation to capital project budget for a building condition assessment that includes Brick House, Hillhold, Neversink Valley, and Farmers Museum for the amount of $250,000. And also to install a natural gas line and a high-efficiency boiler at Brick House in the amount of $50,000. Upon approval, a new capital project will be created, and the total amount is $300,000 to come from surplus. Motion in a second, please. Cheney, second, O'Donnell. And again, you can see this was just changed to actually provide more information for all of the individual projects rather than lumping it everything together under one $3 million price tag. Jim?
Okay, so, Chairman is correct, the original amount was $3 million, but after drilling down and having numerous discussions, I just felt it would be better to get an accurate cost on each of these facilities and a hard number on what the rehabilitation of those structures would be. An immediate fix to one of the buildings would be a high-performance gas boiler and a gas line on 17K to the Brick House. Parks is super excited about this endeavor. We're grateful for the opportunity and, thank the legislature and the city's office for making the money available. But I just think a more cautious approach, and it's not going to take long. We're going to go to work right away on the RFP, and get an engineering firm to assess these buildings and get a hard number on what's going to cost to rehab.
Okay. Questions? Mr. Padu?
Yeah,
Looks
thank
like you have
Mr.
a hand up.
Chairman. I do. We talked about this yesterday in physical services, and we talked about a whole bunch of things which are involved in this project. I did talk with a couple of the board members yesterday in that regard, because we talked about the Amy Bolker Center as well. This particular building here didn't have electric heat put in last year.
It did have electricity, but Brick House, yes.
And then it was turned off because the bills were too high.
It was never turned on.
That's what I'm hearing from the board, and let's just go a little further. When Mr. Rose was here, there was also an overview of all the chimneys at the different museums, et cetera.
Okay.
And they needed to be replaced, so if you're looking to put a high-end boiler, unless it's direct vent,
It's direct vent, yes, it is.
but there's issues in a lot of the chimneys that were supposed to be worked on and apparently haven't been, so I don't know if you know about that, or if you see any of his reports that were in the files or anything.
I didn't see, I went through all of Richard's files, I didn't see anything on that. The chimneys, really, the chimneys.
Okay, Well, that's something maybe you should look at, just to see.
If I could.
The reason I'm asking that is because you said, if there's surplus money available now, we need to fix them, let's do it.
100%.
Let's fix those. We've already done the surveys, we know what needs to be done. And then again, I want to go back to the Amy Bolker Center. In discussion with them about it, you mentioned how nobody's contacted you, but everything's approved through the DEC,
That's
stuff like that.
Well, for the new location, that's correct.
Okay, and in the contract, does it say that the Hillhold board is responsible for maintenance at that?
What contract?
However, it's written down, if the Amy Bolker Center is built there, that any of the maintenance that needs to be done has to be either fundraised or done by the Hillhold, paid for by the Hillhold.
On the new
Which is
facility?
why they haven't contacted you, because you made it seem yesterday like, we're waiting for them to contact us.
Okay.
But I don't know if they've ever had that discussion with you in regards to why there's a statement like that when, don't we take care of the arboretum?
We do, the Arboretum,
Right.
the Arboretum does, well, let me just backtrack a little, Mike, I don't want to be confrontational here, we're here to
I'm
make
not
this
trying to be
happen,
either.
we're here to make this happen. As far as the Amy Bull Chris Center is concerned, I don't know what you're referencing about the cost, but it's always been my position since I came here, and I apologize if I'm repeating myself to everyone here. One of the first things I did as commissioner went to New York City, met with the commissioner of Parks and Recreation from New York City and his deputies, and got a lot of useful information. And the major takeaway was you need to work with your friends groups in a positive manner. And while they can have autonomy and fundraise, there also has to be an understanding that if they raise $200,000, there's some portion of that, not all of it, or some responsibility has to go towards the maintenance and operation of these facilities. If what you're referencing is, I did say to them that when you're developing a cost for the Amy Chris Center, there has to be a line item there for the overhead in perpetuity. That's a real number there. You can't say it's gonna cost 1.2 million to build a building and leave out the overhead and maintenance cost on the taxpayers in perpetuity. So there has to be a real number of how much it's gonna cost annually to run that building. And if Parks has to add it to their budget, we will, but we have to know that number.
Well, how would you know that number if we don't have a building, right?
Well, you would estimate it. I mean, the building's, 2,000 square feet. It costs so much for electric, so much for gas, so much for maintenance, and so on.
Is there a possibility that, have you been at a lot of their meetings or any of their meetings lately?
I usually go once or twice a year, but Tamara is charged with that. She is my eyes, my ears, whatever is reported there, she reports back to me.
Okay. So maybe, I don't know, that's one of the biggest holdup is that. Wherever it's written down, that part.
Well, I don't know that it's written down, I don't know that it's written down anywhere. In my discussions, it was my personal opinion that, we should really take a look at all of the licensing agreements we have with each of these friends groups, because quite frankly, they're written on a page like this, and they're 30 years old. Yeah, the friends groups have, funds in their account,
Right.
and, we should be a little more diligent when it comes to dealing with how we contract their operation as it relates to how the county oversees it.
I agree. So maybe that's something we could look at setting up to make them so that everybody understands exactly what's going on. Because apparently they're misunderstanding. You explained it to me, I understand it, but them thinking that we don't want to move forward with the monies that they have as well, which they'll be using,
Yes.
without knowing the full, so.
Well, it concerns me too, though, that there's a lot of money pledged by
Individuals.
and residents. And, we have gotten calls, what's going on? So I just think this is a perfect time for us to take a look at this whole scope of work that we're talking about. Agreements with the friends groups, how we proceed, which buildings we go first. Maybe we start with one museum and get a real fix on the cost, because our fear was after $3 million, we come back and we want more, what happens then? So it's all 100% on the table.
Wait, so maybe that's something we could set up, have them all come in, all like,
Comment?
No, I have.
discuss that's with them all, and so that everybody knows what's
I
gonna.
agree, we'll set it up for next month.
We can't go.
No, I will send the next, we'll set up meetings with all the friends groups.
Ms. Benelli?
just to add to this, and to, when we sat down to talk about, this list of projects and what you're looking at before you, we've also taken a look at and some of the contracts and a lot of the discussion that you're having now, quite frankly, in conversations with the county executive's office, we're in the process of looking at all of those. They are pretty outdated, as the commissioner said, and we do need to look at that and shore all of that up too. Some of those contracts really are not the best, and they really don't clarify a lot of the issues that we're talking about here today. So it's being worked on as we speak.
Well, that's a good thing.
So, yes, and that came out in the previous discussions that led us to the resolution that's, or the request that's before you.
Right, because the next one is the Arboretum for $600,000. So is their license and everything okay with everybody?
I can't speak to any of that, all of those things that we looked at.
Well, that's what I'm,
Right
and that's
now.
what the point I'm making, is that we need to have an agreement that they understand before we start giving money, building stuff at different parks and museums, and not having them understand what they're responsible for. I mean, that's probably the most important thing to do before we spend any of this money, in my opinion.
Okay,
We should definitely take, that's being done. I mean, we're gonna drill down on that, and it's probably the most important cognitive.
all right.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to the resolution before us. Any other questions? All in favor as presented? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. E, request supplemental appropriation to the capital project budget for golf equipment. Upon approval, a new capital project will be created. This is in the amount of $422,000 to come from surplus. Motion in a second, please. Mr. O'Donnell, second.
Second.
Mr. Cheney. Jim? I mean,
So
I
this
know
is-
it's the same thing.
This is for both of the golf courses. The rough mowers will replace, once again, the Jacobson mowers that we can no longer get parts for. They're also over 10 years old. The triplex mower, Greenmaster triplex, is going to replace a triplex mower. That is a hydraulically run mower. So the new ones are hybrid and they're run by electric. So there's less potential for killing the grass due to hydraulic leaks and much more energy efficient. And the Real Masters are also going to be replacing Jacobsons, which we no longer can get the parts for, and these will also be hybrids that are run by electric.
Very good. Questions from committee members?
Yes.
Mr. Cheney?
On the triplex, does the cost of $52,000, does that include the hookup and electrical run so that it can charge up when it's not used?
I believe that's everything.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Hearing none, all in favor as presented? Aye. Opposed? Carried. F, request supplemental appropriations to the capital project budget for the preliminary engineering design and construction of a new pavilion at the Arboretum in Thomasville Memorial Park. Upon approval, a new capital project will be created. This is in the amount of $600,000. Motion in a second, please. O'Donnell, second. Cheney? Jim? Or Deanna?
So this is something that's been talked about for a number of years, and just give you something to focus on if you've ever been to Bethel. There's a large pavilion there. It's not going to be that large or extravagant, but this structure will have garage doors and be able to host events year round. We'll also be upgrading the bathrooms and septic system at the Arboretum.
Questions from committee members? Hearing none, all in favor as presented?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice night.
Eric. Commissioner of Public Works, Eric Benega. A is request supplemental appropriation to the capital project budget for Pumpkin Swamp Bridge replacement in Town of Goshen. This project has been approved under the 2022 capital plan as project number 51. Upon approval, the funds will increase the existing capital plan number 461 to total $1,750,000 to come from bonding. Motion and a second, please. O'Donnell, Tortel. Eric.
So we're just continuing with our bridge replacement program, getting a couple, 2 or 3 done every year. This one is identified for complete replacement, removal of the concrete deck, steel beams, concrete abutments and wing walls, and replacement with a steel pile foundation, new windows and abutments. So we went through secret, we closed the loop on secret last night, and
Fiscal.
this will be for construction.
Ms. Tortel.
Time do you think this project will take for the whole bridge to be going down and rebuilt? Back into this.
Duration, or is it 6 months or something?
It'd probably be close to that, maybe a little under 6 months.
Plus or minus 6 months?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. B, request supplemental appropriation to the capital project budget for preliminary engineering and design for the replacement of Jessup Switch Bridge in the town of Goshen. This project has been approved under the 2022 capital plan as project number 45. And upon approval, a new capital plan will be created in the amount of $50,000 to come from bonding. Motion in a second, please. O'Donnell, second, Tortel. And again, this is for the, engineering, no construction.
Correct. 50,000 just for engineering. We started the secret process yesterday at the physical services meeting to declare the intent for lead agency. So once that process goes through, we'll be back with design money. Back to construction money at a later point. And this also is identified as a bridge for complete replacement, the deck, steel beams, concrete abutments.
Any questions from committee members? Hearing none, all in favor as presented? Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right, so next, after one is skipped, we're going to request to accept and appropriate funds from the New York State DEC on behalf of the U.S. Army in accordance with 10 U.S. Code 2665E USC from the sale of timber and forestry products on Army installations. Payment is in the amount of $59,841.71. It's from the fiscal years 2015 to 2021. Motion in a second, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
Alan Duke. Gentlemen.
So in accordance with the reference law here, the county receives funding through this program for foresting, sale of timber, Army installations, and it's identified as funds that have to be used back for highway purposes. We discussed that with the county attorney's office to make that clear, and with our fiscal manager as well, so it's a budget appropriately when the funds come in.
All right. Questions from committee members? Actually, this is the first time I ever heard of something like this in all my years here, but we'll take it. Ms. Tortel?
They also, I believe, put localities through the same funding program.
Okay, do they?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the program for West Point. Thank you.
Very well.
Thank you. Okay, hearing no other questions, all in favor as presented? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next up, Bob, come join the table. This is request supplemental appropriation to the capital's project budget for Orange County Transfer Station number 3. This project will cover the cost of repair, replacement, reconstruction of the Port Jervis Transfer Station building, scale, hopper, including internet and electric. Upon approval, a new capital project will be created in the amount of $150,000. Motion in a second, please. Brescia, second, Benton. Bob.
Okay, the building repairs, as listed there, I listed all the components, along with, new scale booth. There is none there now. I did have some pictures sent over this morning.
Yes. I'm going to pass these around. We requested the pictures yesterday of
Pictures
the
of the hopper, right?
Yeah. Explain what the hopper does to
Well, the hopper is,
people that don't know the industry here.
yeah, there's a, this is a registered facility as opposed to permitted facilities that are at New Hampton and used to be at Newburgh. So there's a limit of frontage there, and it's only to take household refuse. So there's no building. There's a hopper, the trucks back up to it and dump. Then it's transferred from the hopper to trailer. The hopper has been there for many years, made out of steel. We just it needs to be repaired.
Yeah,
Before it fails.
You can see many extra welds.
Yeah, you can see it's a stand and it's a steel, and we're gonna do it. We're doing this in-house. We have experienced welders that work in the transfer station part of the FNS. We'll take that on, as well as a transfer station operator in Port Jervis is an experienced carpenter. He's gonna direct the guys, and we'll do a lot of the work on the building in-house. So most of these expenses are for material. We will, however, need an electrician, we will need a plumber, and we have contracts for that. So there was a question also yesterday, there's internet improvements that we asked for. I think it's a $10,000 item.
Yeah.
$13,000 item.
10,000.
Yeah, there's number one, the scale booth that needs to talk to the computer in the building. There's credit card transactions going on. You have to talk to the county credit card vendor and that stuff. And there's reports that are done. The internet is slow there, it's old. So it needs to be upgraded to accommodate that, as well as we've been working to get security cameras on all the sites. And so we need the upgraded internet for that as well.
Okay.
That answers the question.
Questions from committee members? Mr. Padu?
Yeah, I don't know if I asked you this yesterday or not.
Go ahead.
On a lot of these projects, $150,000 for this one, $50,000 for engineering on another one. Was any of those discussed when we talked about the additional capital projects money so that we wouldn't be taxing again on it? I mean, we have the surplus money. We use the surplus on a lot of different things. Do you have to ask, or is that county executive directing you that we're doing this with that? I mean, can you mention that to him?
Yeah, we did talk about this briefly last night, and Deb's here as well, and I did mention that some of that, I think, goes through the budget department. We coordinate the projects that we saw on this list were in addition to what we already had on the capital plan, so it was extra work. But it doesn't, as my understanding, it doesn't preclude some of the capital work that we had planned to come out of surplus, but that's a better question for Deb.
Yeah, so what we do is we provide our capital plan each year, and we try to keep the bonding pretty much level so that we know going forward, we're not gonna have big spikes in our debt service. This is above and beyond the projects that are in the capital plan, so that's why we're using the surplus money. Depending on where we end up at the year, it's possible that there could be, some change in it, but for right now, this is where the county executive and the budget and finance department, I think, feel that this is a good place to go. I think it's about 14 million on that page or something like that.
Yeah, this 14. I just wondered why some of the smaller items weren't included instead of bonding. I mean, we're spending big money here.
It may be, we are looking at that, because, we are.
If I might add, this was also elevated. There was a visit from HR, and they saw the condition of the building there and thought that they wanted this accelerated.
Okay.
So that's why we're talking.
Ms. Votak?
Technical question on this. Wait, how many hoppers do you have out there? And
One.
You only have one, so while this is down, how are you gonna manage?
We're going to prefab the pieces
Mhm.
over in New Hampton. We have a shop there. And we'll bring them over, and like Saturday afternoons we're closed. When we close at 3:00, we can cut them out and place them. That's kind of,
Oh, so it's only gonna be.
that's the overall plan. There won't be any downtime.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was curious about. if
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
gonna be
yeah.
down.
And remember, this is a small tonnage facility too. It's what's called registered 50. But it doesn't handle anywhere near what
Yeah, so it's used for the small packers, not the.
Not even, it's.
It's homeowners.
Household.
Yeah, it's
All
residential.
household.
There's no commercial at all.
Yeah, they don't have a tipping floor like,
Yeah, I mean, if you want to include Port Jervis
Let
as
things
being
go.
commercial, we do take Port Jervis garbage.
It's a
Yeah,
registered,
that's what I was talking about.
it's a registered facility versus a permanent facility. New Hampshire's a permanent facility.
Yeah, I used to drive the packer down to Rockland and dump it out at Rockland, and just dump it,
Yeah.
and throw some switches and off, so to speak.
much more sophisticated facility. Torn Road, Torn Valley Road.
Yeah, this is the, like Eric said, it's called a registered facility, it's for smaller operations, residential.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Committee members? Okay, all in favor as presented? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, come on up. A looks like an addition. Request to have properties removed from the auction and retained by the county for open space purposes if they are not paid off prior to the tax payment deadline. This is Blooming Grove, section block and lot 5214, 5215, 5216. Town of Crawford, section block and lot 12-1-42.2. In the town of Mount Hope, section block and lot 10-174. Got to get a motion in the second for discussion here. Second. Tortel and Hines. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. And I'd like to say thank you to everyone for allowing me to present these. I know some of these came in kind of last minute.
Yeah.
And I apologize for that. The deadline, as far as I was concerned, was 10 days ago, and I tried to keep people to that. However, these came in, and thank you for allowing me to present that. First of all, this will be for the auction that's coming up on September 8th.
September, that's where I want to make sure we have this specific here. The auction is September 8th.
The auction is September 8th. The last payment deadline for taxes is Friday, September 2nd.
Okay, Friday, September 2nd.
Full legislature meets on Thursday, the 1st. So this way we get to have the buffer that we wanted to have between when the final payment is done and before the bidding starts. Bidding will start on Tuesday, September 6th. Day after Labor Day.
Okay, so again, we're also adding a property from the town of Newburgh that I was getting calls on this weekend that the town is interested in purchasing if they do not redeem
Yes.
the taxes that are owed. So they, again, so the property owner, I shouldn't say homeowner, the property owner has until Friday, September 2nd to pay the monies to us.
Correct.
Or else it will, that's the deadline, it'll go to the auction.
Correct.
Or it would go to the auction, and at that point, we're gonna be authorizing today, hopefully, that if they do not redeem the property, that the town of Newburgh would then like to buy it instead of having to go to auction.
Exactly. And I was going to present the ones for the county executive first because the town of Newburgh property was actually on that list. But because the town of Newburgh is trying to bid on that and take it, I will present that right after that.
Very good.
Thank you. So these first properties, the first one is actually 3 parcels together that are total about a half acre or so. It's 2 garages and a parking area in the town of Blooming Grove.
Okay, now if I can stop you for a second, I had this criticism of Eric yesterday. When you send us something, can you make sure that we can see it?
Certainly.
I just put the Barry.
I think the tendency is for us to all have color prints, and then when it's photographed in black and
Yeah,
white.
I mean, I don't know what makes it easy or whatever, but yeah,
It should be.
none of these, we can actually see anything
I
about
apologize
it.
for that.
So-
It looks like that's the property at night, basically, is what.
Maybe it's your printer that, or whatever.
It's got color.
Right,
Color.
if we could possibly send PDFs that could be printed out, that might work, but as I understand it, these are photocopies no matter what.
Okay.
So, and they're black and white photocopies. So
Well, somehow
I
we need,
apologize in advance.
somehow the departments need to talk and
Right.
figure out so that we can have something that's readable, please.
I think what we'll do is, in addition to, if we do provide aerials, we'll provide tax maps, which are almost inevitably black and white and a little bit easier to understand.
Okay, so continue.
Thank you.
This first one is 3 parcels, total of a little under an acre, I believe, 2 old garages and a parking area. They're next to the Shinnemonk Trail that we're hoping to propose. Oh, really? Just a little one. The Shinnemonk Trail that's going to be added in, and if this is not redeemed, then this would be a perfect location for a trailhead access, possibly parking. These parcels right now owe back taxes, penalties, and interest is approximately $100,000.
Wow.
So if they are not redeemed and paid off by the second, we're requesting that they could be pulled for access to Shinnemonk Trail.
And they have structures on them now?
2 garages, yes.
2 garages. Okay, so we have to take down the garages. Condition of the buildings? I mean,
they look
Poor.
fair at best.
fair at best. Okay, thank you. Mr. O'Donnell?
So we're taking them down.
We could.
No decision has been made on that yet. The decision was only made to try to take them if they were available.
All right.
Okay, next.
The second property is a 93-acre horse farm in the town of Crawford, section 12, block 1, lot 42.2. It includes, I'm sorry.
Lori, want to pass it?
Oh, sure. Sorry about that. There you go. It includes a 3-bedroom house built in 1986, about 2,700 square feet, and a large horse barn. It could serve as expansion of the Warwick Hill property and as watershed protection. The assessment indicates a fair market value of $978,500 for the property. Right now, taxes, penalties, and interest are approximately $145,000. And again, if it were not paid off by September 2nd, we're requesting that it could be taken for open space.
Structures on it?
Single-family house, I said, built in 1986, according to public records, about 2,700 square feet.
Okay.
There's a barn there.
And it looks like there's some sort of
A large barn.
large barn
Right, I could not find the
or
details. of that.
stable or who knows,
Right.
something.
It's a horse farm, so I'm assuming that it's probably
Some
some
sort of
stalls.
stable stalls. Yep. Mr. Cheney?
Yeah. I don't know whether you're the appropriate person to do this or not, but I'd like to understand better why we need to expand the Warwick Hill property. I mean, this is property that's been in the county's hands for a long time, and it seems like we've been trying to find other uses for it and ways to shed it from the county, and also just the actual value of the property for watershed protection. I would think that we're not going to build a reservoir, so if we're talking about aquifer protection, I guess I'd like to understand better the value of this particular parcel relative to that.
Right, correct, and I apologize, I do not know that answer. I could reach out to, President Allen. Ed?
I can,
Sure, go ahead. Absolutely.
yeah, they're both good questions. We flagged the property specifically because it is contiguous to the Warwick Hill properties, and for that reason. But the points that you raise are valid. It's a very large property. It's contiguous to the Warwick Hill. We have some very productive wells on there. So if the goal was to expand the reservoir properties, then it has value. If the goal is not to do that, then, I defer back to the legislature to decide what best to do with the property.
Could I just-
Sure, absolutely.
But the wells that you referenced, they're not active production wells at this point in time, are they? They were tested and determined to be possibly a good source.
Correct. And then the town backed out of that agreement.
Right. And I guess that, us taking property that has this significant value to it, there's a DEC program and Newburgh's involved in it where, if you feel there's a need to protect a certain watershed area, they have grant monies available to allow you to do that.
Yes, the water quality improvement.
So just to follow, so if this property, is redeemed by the current owner, then this won't happen.
Correct.
And if it is not, how much have we, in taxes, that would we be basically saying we don't?
145.
Take that,
145. I should also point out that these properties are all on the auction, of course. During the list, I do have copies of the book, should anyone want it, or a pamphlet. And this one is item 25. We have a, that's a good idea. And we have a minimum on this one of $250,000.
It seems like might be perfect for someone who wants to have a horse farm. They would just obviously have to do renovations, I would assume.
It's it's number 20. Oh, sure. There you go. It's number 25, $145,000 in back taxes, penalties and interest. The minimum bid, we have starting at $250,000.
Mr. Anagnestakis.
Just to make it clear for everyone, so if we vote to pull it from here, we're going to take it over as county and pull it from this off.
If it's not redeemed by the taxpayer, correct.
If it's not redeemed, right, by the taxpayer by the last moment that he has the ability to. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hines.
So I don't like just because we just sold all the houses that we were trying to buy.
Mhm.
I'm back in the house selling business again. We do this, right?
Right, this would be a single family house and a horse farm that would require us to maintain.
So is it your intention to take the land and then subdivide it and sell the house off?
For open space, I'm not necessarily the best one to answer that, Alan.
It is something that could be considered. I didn't fully realize the significant value of the property as been presented here today, so.
Hopefully we wouldn't.
We've
have
been selling
demolition
houses like
costs.
crazy because we bought all these houses to protect watersheds. And now we're having a wholesale and here we are buying it back again. It seems to me to be a vicious cycle that we should, in a circle that we should avoid.
Well, removing it comes up. Mr. Brescia.
Yeah, I concur with
Kevin and Barry on this. I mean, that's, you know, you and I sat on the real property committee for quite a number of years, and that was the direction that Langdon was taking us, and we were following, and John McCary, and this is kind of reverse. I think out in Crawford, the town of Crawford worked out their own separate deal for water with a private property owner, so I don't know, my father probably built that one, but it's probably worth it, a good value, but, you know, I can't see us, you know, doing this.
The house is valuable too. It's fairly new.
Yeah, but we're not in the real estate business.
Right. Right, I agree. Mr. Cheney?
Is the house still occupied?
I believe so. I'm not positive about the occupancy of this. If you, because I mentioned in the auction book, because they were just recently out of all the properties posting them. Or recently been inspection occupied.
Inspection
How many years of back taxes?
Right, so, it was occupied. It was occupied when I was there in February.
Mr. O'Donnell?
So what was the arguments for putting this in our hands?
We look at the parcels for potential open space value. So the fact that it was such a significant parcel in terms of acreage, and the fact that it abuts the Warco properties that are part of the reservoir properties, we thought it had potential for some open space value for that purpose. But in light of the discussion here,
We're not gonna make a reservoir.
you know, I can see where the legislature may decide to just list it in the.
And there's no discussion on reservoir.
Of course not.
Right.
Which is ridiculous, but. Okay, so next, Paul?
The third property is Town of Mount Hope, Section 10, Block 1, Lot 74. 80.2 acres of vacant land. It's on both sides of Lake Avenue. It is just south of the village of Otisville.
Picture.
Vacant land includes mostly wooded property. Looks like there's a body of water in the southwest corner, as I recall. It could serve as potential park expansion for passive recreation. has an equalized assessed value in fair market value according to the assessor of $182,000. Back taxes, penalties, and interest is $11,600.
This is number 64.
Number 64 in the book. Yes. And again, same situation, if the property were paid off by the property owner, this all becomes a moot point.
Right. Mr. Cheney.
Yeah, it suggests that it could serve as a potential park expansion or for passive recreation. What park would be expanded by the addition of this property?
I'm not sure if the town, we have property over there.
It would just be generally,
Open
expansion of
space.
park land, not necessarily expansion of existing.
Okay.
At one point, we used to take these properties in potential future use of parkland alienation. When we had a problem, then we could flip these park acres one for another, so. Okay, so pretty good explanation. So it seems like there's some resistance to number 3. Is there any resistance to number 4?
Sorry, number 4 was the town of Newbury's property.
Well, 4 here.
Oh,
mine
right, that was the original list.
Is
Sorry,
Mount Hope.
apologies.
Okay, so is someone going to make a motion
Resistance to
that,
number 2. I make a motion that we vote separately on the 3 that are being presented to us.
and, right, so
On this,
what I
on
would
this,
really would like is a motion for number 2 to be removed from the list. So that we vote no to number 2. That's what I'm thinking. There's resistance on number 2. So the motion would be to remove number 2.
All right. So I'll make a motion to remove number 2, the Crawford property, from this list and take a separate vote on number 2, the Crawford property.
Okay. All right, all in favor of the motion to have a separate vote and remove it? Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right, thank you. So you said Newburgh is the 4th one, but that's separate.
Yes, separate, because the town of Newbury has come forward and placed a bid.
Right, okay. Okay, so what we're looking here now is to approve number 1 and number 4. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried, thank you. Okay, so now the motion is for number 2.
The Crawford
The
property.
Crawford property, the separate vote. So all in favor of removing it from the auction? Say aye. All in favor of removing it from the auction? Opposed?
No,
Opposed.
unanimously opposed.
Unanimously opposed. So it's removed. So it's removed, correct. Okay, so 1 and 4 made it.
So it's not removed from the auction. It
It
stays.
stays in the auction. It's removed from this sheet, asking this to be
Well, we-
removed.
Right, we removed it from the sheet and then we approved not removing it from the auction,
Right. Technicalities of language.
just to be clear.
Did you get that there?
Okay, so now we're on to Newburgh.
Yes, this property is, apologize. What's the,
On Gardner Town Road.
Gardner Town Road, right, 23.27. There's a photograph of it. Actually, a legible photograph, I should say. This property, the town of Newburgh is looking at it because they own properties on either side of it, and it could be used to expand their town-owned property. It's just off of Route 32. It says it's a commercial lot, but it's actually zoned R3, which is a higher density residential parcel. It does have municipal water and sewer. They owe back taxes of $8,900. The town of Newburgh has put in a bid of $15,000.
Okay.
And again, same situation. If this property is redeemed by the property owners prior to September 2nd, then it would.
This picture is clear. Mr. Anagnestakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so on this property, the town of Newburgh has put in all the appropriate paperwork to request the property, is my understanding, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now you said they put in a bid for $15,000, but my question to you is, the back tax is $8,934.84. If the owner pays that by his deadline, he will get his property back. The town, as the town has the first option to pick it up and they want it, why would they need to put in a 15,000 bid if they would, it seems to me, put in a bid of $8,934.84? If the property owner didn't pick it up, they would then pick it up for that price.
Well, first of all, we don't accept pennies, so
Okay.
it has to be a rounded dollar.
Rounded up $1.
Yes, and that would have been a viable number also, had they just put in $8,900 and 30.
When they put in their amount, did they know the amount of back tax that you were looking to recoup on the property?
Yes, but again, this was done rather quickly from the town of Newburgh's position.
So they didn't do the due diligence to figure out that they could have put in $8,900.
Not necessarily, because the minimum bid in the book is $15,000.
Yeah, they just matched the book.
They matched the
So
book.
look at the book.
When I spoke to the supervisor, I told him that they would have to at least match the back taxes or another person
But is that
that
our-
submitted a bid.
Is that our official policy when a town or municipality wants to pick up a property and has the first rights to it? Is it our official policy that they must put in a price that is in that book as the minimum?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, most of the time when the municipalities are putting in their bid, the book's not even available.
That's right. That's my point.
True.
So had they done that due diligence and asked you how much was owed, and you had told them 8,900 and change, and had they said, can we, since we're the municipality, we want to pick it up, unless the owner picks it up, can we put in $8,934 as our bid? You would have told them,
That would be acceptable.
okay,
Keep in mind also that we usually tell people that they have to put in a bid that is at least as much as the back taxes. The number might be a month old, in which case you're looking at another % of interest and all. And we do have the school taxes, which are coming out next week. So they may have been thinking that, oh, well, we may be smart to put a buffer in to make sure that we're covering any kind of increased percentage and school taxes that would be due.
got it. One last question. If they were to contact you and say, can we revise our 15,000 and make it, and let's say that calculation that you just talked about brought it up to 9,500. If they said, can we revise our 15,000 bid to 9,500, what would you tell them?
But they
I would
already
tell
have a
them no.
bid submitted, I would say no, because they submitted the bid.
Fair enough.
Had they,
That's it.
had
That's
they
all I need
asked
to
the
know.
question prior to that, I would say, it's not up to me, it's going to be up to the legislature.
Perfect answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right, any other questions? Mr. Cheney?
Yeah, so if we approve today removing it from the bid list, then there would basically be no bid. So what would the bid that they get, would that be returned? Because there would be no bid, or there would be no auction. It wouldn't, we're talking to remove it from the auction.
Correct, but we're not going to remove any of the properties until after December. So it's staying on the auction in the book until the second.
Property.
Right, and if the property owner doesn't
Doesn't pay.
pay the taxes, then it automatically goes to Newburgh.
For 15,000.
Correct,
Why 15,000?
Because that's what they did.
because that's their bid.
But normally they don't need to bid, do they?
Yeah, they do.
They have to pay, yeah, but they don't have to, because on these other two properties that we've approved, they're gonna, just go to who we approved they could go to if there's no,
But they
if it's
offered,
been removed.
they made an offer.
If I can clarify.
County's taking the other two.
Mr. Chairman, if I can
Go ahead.
clarify. So they, to Mr. Cheney's point, I think they haven't bid, but they've made an offer of 15,000. They haven't bid because it's not an auction.
Right.
But they, as the town and wants it, they've offered to pay 15, and we're gonna vote to approve that unless the owner picks up the property.
Send a check and everything.
It's not a bid, it's an offer. It's not an auction.
Right,
So
it's
there's
an
a
offer.
bid.
We're removing it from the bid, from the auction.
So nobody else gets a chance to bid.
Right. All right. Understood? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Ms. Benelli?
Before you move any further, I just wanted to interject. If you recall, a few months ago, shortly after Paul was appointed as the director of real property, he did a whole memo explaining all of what we're talking about this afternoon.
Mhm.
So I would suggest we pull out that memo and to read it, because I think that that will help clarify some of the questions that happened this afternoon.
And there
And
is,
thank you for that.
and there may be rooms for further clarification of those rules
And
that
if
he
so,
explained as
then-
well.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're on to deed sale parcels. Motion and a second for discussion, please.
Second.
Paduk, Patel, Paul.
Certainly. Mr. Patrick, I'm sorry, did you have something else you wanted to add? Okay. So the first property is one that was tabled from last month. This is a vacant lot in the town of Crawford, 10.6 acres of landlocked wetland. This property has been on the leftover list since not selling at the auction in 2014. We did not have any history of any bids upon the property going back to 2017 or so that we could track backwards. I should point out, this is one that was bid on actually at the last auction, and the person forfeited after putting their deposit down. Just the first actually had, but we did take all of the properties that were on the leftover list, 101, I think it was at the time, and put them on. So they were all being offered at $100 minimum bid apiece, and this one was bid upon. But the person forfeited, so back on the leftover list. The group that's offering to put a bid in on this last month of $4,010, because we had a minimum bid of $4,000. That bid goes back to that 2014 auction. The property, again, landlocked, wetland. Their purpose, the bidder is known as New York for Whales. I believe they sent a letter out to people. They are a nonprofit organization. Their purpose here is to try to plant milkweed on the property to foster monarch butterflies in their migration. As admirable as that is, the property would be would still be taxable as far as my interpretation of the tax laws. In this case, it has to do with use of the property, and leaving a property empty, just planting milkweed on it does not necessarily qualify for a tax break. So although the taxes aren't that onerous, as far as I can tell, the property would be taxable. I should point out that that is actually up to the assessor for their interpretation of the property tax law as far as whether or not it would be taxable or not. These owners do have some properties that are tax exempt, but they use those for actual education purposes. This one being landlocked wetland in the middle of another larger wetland could not serve, in my opinion, as an educational property. The reason why I advocate accepting the $4,000 bid, even though there's $17,000 and change in back taxes, penalties, and interest, is that $7,000 of that is actually penalties and interest in addition to the $10,000 in taxes. However, we're not going to get too many other people interested in a property that can't easily be accessed except from an adjoining property and cannot be developed because of wetlands. So my opinion was accept the $4,000, take the $13,000 loss, and put the property back on the tax roll.
And hopefully they pay their taxes every year. All right, any questions? Mr. O'Donnell?
So have you spoken to Kathy Williams or the other Miss Williams in Florida?
I've spoken with Kathy a couple of times, mostly been trying to communicate with her via email. She had a terrible phone connection each time I spoke with her. I have not had a response from them in the last few weeks, including Friday. I reached out again to find out what their position was. They have not pulled their bid, so it's just let it ride as far as we are concerned. If they did submit a bid, they have not rescinded it.
Okay, so I'll be voting no on this. I did a little research and there's was a lot of questions in my mind.
Okay. You're welcome.
Did you share that? No. It's on the internet.
Any other questions?
I was going to say, I was asked a question after the last meeting while this was tabled and outside of the committee, but I can address one of the other issues that might be on people's mind is the planting of milkweed, as far as whether or not it is an invasive plant or it is harmful to wetlands. And I was surprised that that was actually a potential issue, but in researching it, there's a lot on the internet about that. But the New York Fish and Game Service and wildlife from different organizations, all considered to be not invasive. It is aggressive, meaning that if you plant it in out in the open, it will continue to grow. It is a stubborn weed that can be difficult to remove, but it's not considered invasive. And they do encourage on the government's website to also plant milkweed to help the butterflies.
Yep.
I'm sure there's any other questions or points that I may be able to help out with.
Any other questions? Okay, Ms. Tortel.
Okay. So we, as a county, have designated this area as a wetland. Has it been designated as an area, wetland area by the DEC or by the state?
Yeah, we as a county have not. It's actually DEC and federal.
Okay.
Yep.
Good, I see a lot of that. Yeah.
Right. Oh, yeah, you do have one of the color maps there. That's,
Yeah.
it's, as I said, a triangular wetland in a larger wetland.
All right, parcel number 2.
Parcel number 2 is a small 75 by 125 residential lot on Maple Avenue in the town of Mount Hope. It's just a small empty parcel along a, I believe, paper street. Oh no, it's actually a street, but I'm not sure how paved or how wide the roads are there. It has $1,271 or so in back taxes, penalties, and interest. The bid is $1,500, $1,501. The and the bidder is a company or a person who has bid on multiple properties in the past and successfully gotten some.
Okay, questions? All right, number 3, now vote.
Similar property, 80 by 100 property. It is again on a small, looks like a proposed street. I do not think it is a public street right there. Same bidder, $1,949 in back taxes, a minimum bid of $2,000, and $2,000. He's bid $2,001.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. All right, so we'll take these. I'm going to separate out number 1 since Mr. O'Donnell expressed an opinion. Okay, so all in favor of number 1? Aye. Opposed? Mr. O'Donnell, 1. Carried. Parcels number 2 and 3. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried, unanimous.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Quick statement if I can.
Sure.
I wanted to thank Paul and I want to thank his staff. There was actually a constituent issue that carried over from the last administration. They had tried to solve it. It got stalled in various locations, Cold War refunds that were due some constituents. Paul was actually on vacation, but still responded. His staff got right on it and they solved the problem within a day or two. And outstanding service. I want to thank you personally.
Well, thank you for the comments. And let me just say that we have a wonderful staff in the property. Kudos to Eric and John McCary before him. A lot of the people have been here for years, very experienced, very professional. Could not be happy with it.
Good. Thank you. And also, thank you for printing me that Camp LaGuardia map.
Oh, certainly.
When I started to ask some questions in the Republican caucus and such, I didn't know that the Times Herald Record was also working on a headline so that there might be some, change of opinion or some different resolutions for that now. So again, thank you very much. Okay, next, Carrie Gallagher, Commissioner of Finance.
Good evening, now, this point.
All right, letter A is request to create 1 Deputy Commissioner of Finance position, management grade 25. Motion in a second, please. Gotcha, second, Hines. Carrie.
Yeah, so I brought this to PNC, as I stated in the PNC committee. This was something that was in the works prior to me coming on board with Karen and Commissioner Gross, and the need is just there. We are taking on more work in the Department of Finance and more high-level work. And I just believe at this point, it's in the best interest of the county to have a second deputy to help oversee almost our $880 million budget.
Again, this did pass P&C. Mr. O'Donnell.
So if I read this right, it's gonna take 2 people to replace you as the deputy.
It will,
It is
yes,
up.
yes, exactly, because I did the work of 2 people. Thank you for the kudos.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. O'Donnell. B is a request to accept and affirm the Orange County investment policy. And this is something that we do every year.
Yes.
Motion and a second for discussion, please.
So moved.
Tortel? Hines?
I
Can
need
you-
to go over the changes. If you'd
Yes,
like. Just if
exactly.
you all turn to page 4. The main changes are that I need an increase in the amount of money that I can give to each bank due to the amount that we are cash heavy right now. So I have more opportunity to do so. The first bank is Connect One. It went from 50 million to 150 million. The second one is Signature Bank, which went from 150 million to 200 million. And the last was a name change. It's Webster, previously known as Sterling, and that's the same. I increased that to 200 million.
Okay.
Quick question.
Mr. Anagnestakis?
Yeah, any reason that you increased,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Any reason that you increased the couple as opposed to, or were there limits on the other banks that you couldn't increase their limits?
So I could have went across, but honestly,
Across the
these are
board.
the ones that are right now at this point that are, they keep coming to the board, and they're the players in the game.
Okay.
And again, they have to agree to this increase.
They do, yes, I reached
Yeah,
out.
we can't just increase them unilaterally. We have to
Right,
ask
right,
them.
no.
And I understand what you're saying, but I can say without saying one bank, you know, they don't, a lot of them don't even
Yeah.
request back after I offer bids. They
Yeah.
don't even come back to me.
Yeah. Okay, understood.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor as presented? Aye. Opposed? Carried, thank you. Next is similar, request to accept and affirm the Orange County debt management policy. Motion in a second, please.
So moved.
Sartell, Cheney?
So,
Carrie?
yes, so basically this is the same policy, except every year you have to change the last 2 pages, Appendix A and Appendix B. Basically stating that we're still under the limits of what we can go out for bond.
All right. Questions from committee members? Again, an annual event. Yeah, you okay?
Yeah.
All right, all in favor as presented? Aye, opposed, carried, thank you. Okay, D, here we go. Request to accept and appropriate coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds in the amount of $37,385,041 established under U.S. Treasury House Resolution 1319, the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. $2,593,541 for contingency funds, $1 million to create a capital project for water improvements project at Thomas Bull Memorial Park, $1 million for consulting services for environmental, social, and governance matters, ESG, $220,000 to create a capital project for the county clerk mobile sprinter van, $1 million to increase the capital project for IT cyber upgrades, $71,500 for consulting services from Drescher and Malecki, $1,500,000 to create capital projects for Cromline pump station upgrades, $23 million to create a capital project for Human Health Services Building, $7 million to increase the existing capital project for costs associated with the medical examiner's building. Motion, second, please.
So moved.
Cheney, Benton. Carrie?
I think you did the work for me. I apologize how long-winded that is, but
That's okay.
But that's really what the gist of this is.
Has to be specific.
Yes, we came to the table to ask so that we can appropriate these funds into, you know, as you know, when the auditors came last year, it wasn't in our fund balance. Now, by doing this, we're moving it into the general fund. All of these projects will still have to come back to you guys to get the second approval to open up the capital plan.
Okay. Just like normal. Mr. O'Donnell?
And they'll come back individually.
Yes.
Yes.
Again, I'll be talking about the medical examiner's building.
Mhm.
And if you can you either this month, next month, get the medical examiner in?
Sure.
Ask questions about the building.
Okay,
Thank you.
Carrie Ann, can you mark that down for next month, please? Would that be something also to do with physical services? Mr. Cheney?
I think what we've been doing is physical services and health.
Okay. So you would have it too?
Or a combined meeting, but we'll work on it.
Yeah, that's fine. Mr. Anagnestakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a logistics or cash flow question or something of that order. So we're accepting this 37.385 million of cash going into our cash reserves, or we're marking them for these particular projects. When we're going to turn around and do these projects, are we going to, if we do a $7 million medical examiner building, will we do it with cash or will we be bonding?
Let me just explain that $7 million is in addition to the 14 million that you already have approved. This was.
Okay,
And then
I'll
to your
restate
point
that.
that
So
this,
are we going to bond
so
7
that
and
if it
10?
is used with this money, it
Yeah.
will not be bonded.
Right, has to be paid. with
This is
money.
paid in cash. This is the
Well,
whole point of
but-
it, yeah.
Yeah, but that's my point. Is it going to be used with this money? Or is this money somehow going to be? Are we going to end up bonding 14 million for that examiner bill?
So the intent is these
Or whatever it
projects
is.
currently right now. If we were to change those projects, we would have to come back to the legislature.
If we're not gonna meet the time frame of the ARPA funding, then of
That-
course,
that's
we'd
a
have to
concern.
come back. And that's why I left
But it would
these
come
great
to-
men in the back to answer those type of questions for me. So that, for the time frame of that, but if we were unable to meet the time frame, then yes, we'd have to come back for bonding.
Okay, so at this point, we can't state whether we're going to meet the time frame or not going to meet the time frame for each one of the projects.
That is correct.
That's the plan.
It is the plan.
It is the plan to meet.
It is
Yes.
the plan,
Okay,
yes.
so it is the plan to use the cash.
It is the plan to use the cash. And we have to encumber that money by
Correct.
the end of 2024 and spend it and complete whatever the spending
Right,
is
it
by
was-
2026.
Right, it was said otherwise you lose it, which I understand, but
We have to
instead
give
of.
it back, because we have it, now we'd have to give it back.
But instead of losing it or giving it back, would you be able to switch the use of it to
100%.
something else?
Yes,
You
yes,
would. So you could do that and then turn around and bond each one of these.
Exactly.
And that's my point. What will we end up doing? Actually bonding or using the cash? And of course, undetermined at this point.
Our
All right.
intention at this point is to use it this, and if we have to
Okay.
change course, of course, we'll change course, because
Okay,
I'm not gonna have it under my name, and I know the county exec's office never wants to give back money like that.
thank you.
Mr. Cheney, did you have some questions?
I got cleared up, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, any other questions? Mr. Padu?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a concern, the $2,593,540 in contingency funds, how will we determine that's being used? Because if we don't use it, we have to give that back?
So, okay, so again, depending on, so it could be contingency for some of these other projects that might go over budget, or we would have to come back to you to use that money.
Or something else?
Yes.
To Mr. Anastakis' point, we would change the course and have to come back to you with that intention.
So let's say all these projects got approved, we went ahead and that money sat in contingency. And we didn't use it for anything, or we would appropriate it anyway, so we just put it in contingency now, just in case.
Yeah, we're putting it there just in case right now, but we have the intent to use that money on something. So it could be another bridge, it could be a part, it could be a lot of different things. It could be a bridge project, it could be paving, it could be, there's many different things.
Jim,
Go ahead.
just, could you give more clarification as to what consulting services are being provided for environmental, social, and governance matters, and who we would be paying those fees to?
Sure, so that is something, as we spoke about for Moody's, correct? So that it's a requirement for bond ratings that they're looking to see what we're gonna do. So that would have to go out to RFP, and then a consultant firm would come back to us to help us steer the plan going forward.
I think we shared what the ESG is, yeah.
Yeah, you did share
Okay.
in ESG, and so that money is based on discussions you've had.
So, yeah, with our auditors, and then they were reaching out to some various companies. I mean, it's kind of, it's the unknown right now. So yes, does it seem a little bit high? It could be, but hopefully it comes in lower.
Yeah. I guess it's necessary, but it just seems like they're giving you money and then they're telling you, well, you have to justifies it. And then the other consulting services for Dresser and Malecki.
Yeah, so they are the ones that, you know, honestly, when you guys have questions, I go to them,
Right,
you
okay,
know,
they're-
and to
they're
ensure
your
that, yeah,
resource.
they're ensuring that we're keeping all the ducks in a row, all the paperwork and make, you know,
Projects are
procurement.
acceptable
Yes,
for
yes.
this.
Yep,
this
thank
funding.
you for clarifying.
No worries.
Unfortunately, the chairman had to step out. He had a little bit of an emergency, so. Any other questions on this particular item? Everybody understand it? Okay, without any further questions, I'll call.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just those contingency funds, so we could use them now. We could designate them now for something this legislature wanted to. Right, to be used.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anything else? And I'll call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, ladies. And I believe we have a sales tax update.
Yeah, sure. So, as always, we provided the sales tax sheets. I just have to find mine. Thank you. Mark, you're excellent. Sorry, this time. So we are done through August, and currently, year-to-date, we are 30% over budget. And we closed August with our 2 payments at 33%. We will receive 2 additional payments in September, and we are still fiscally short with our sales tax.
Good news. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
The total,
Commissioner?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
The actual, I'm getting there myself.
So the total that we have right now is 140
That's where we sit right now.
right now.
Right, you good?
Yeah, 32.45.
That's the county portion.
Okay. All right, so let's move to our budget director, and we have a request to reallocate deputy budget director from management grade 24 to management 25. This is legislative request 194. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Total and Hines. Okay, ladies, the floor is yours.
So this is based on a desk audit done by Human Resources. Honestly, the duties have increased with a much higher concentration on the technical pieces that we have to use with all of our programming and such. It's a lot. So that's where it came from.
Right, and I believe that this was in front of PNC last
Yes,
week
it
and
was.
passed. Right, right, so any questions or comments? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is carried, and we move on to the next request, which is to abolish the senior budget technician, grade 11, and create 1 budget technician, grade 10. Legislative request 194.
Again, this did go to PNC and task. And this is basically just the elimination of some supervision duties for that person, for that senior budget tech. So we have other people who are going to do the supervisory now, so we just really need the work. We don't need the supervision.
Anybody have any questions? All right, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. And a budget update. How are we doing?
Okay. All right, we're doing well. So basically, let me just say, all the accruals have been reversed, both revenues and expenses. Our revenues are actually up compared to last year in all categories. Our expenses year to year are roughly about at the same percentage. However, the salaries are down a bit. And again, that is due to the vacant positions that we do have. Currently, there are 342 vacant full-time and part-time positions. 252 of them are in the general fund. That does include 11 new positions that the legislature approved last month. Okay, so there were several new positions made. The savings is about $14 million, which 13.1 of that is in the general fund.
Questions?
You're 342 are vacant and part-time. How is that split up? You know,
Full-time and part-time, I have to get you that. I don't have that information.
When you get a chance, if you can send it to the clerk, that
Yep.
would be helpful. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Well, ladies, thank you very
No,
much.
one more page.
Oh, yes, but that's not with them.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm sorry.
No, we finish up with our Commissioner of Planning, Alan Sorensen. Thank you, Alan. And we do have a request to accept and appropriate the Community Economic Adjustment Assistance for responding to threats of resilience of a military installation grant from the U.S. Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation in an amount not to exceed $541,000. Sources of funds is federal grant funds. A local match of 10% is required and will be met through the in-kind staff time. Also, the request to the legislature is to authorize the county executive to enter into an execute a contract with OLDCC when received. The grant funds will be used to complete a resiliency study and implementation action plan to examine the natural gas supply at West Point and Highland Falls, identify risks, and plan for infrastructure improvements that will mitigate identified risks. This is legislative request 206.
So moved.
Somehow I thought you would tell, and did I hear Mr. Paduk?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner.
First, I just want to apologize for making this request belatedly. We've been working with West Point and the Office for Economic Adjustment back and forth over the last couple of months to get this in its final form. We had some things that we had to iron out. This will be phase 2 of the military installation resiliency studies. The first one, if you'll recall, is underway, and that study is focused on the electric supply to West Point. And the purpose of these studies is to ensure that when the Department of Defense is moving forward to improve the infrastructure to serve their facilities, that they're also taking into consideration opportunities to benefit the surrounding communities. So in this case, it'd be the town of Highlands, village of Highland Falls. And as I understand it, these studies are prerequisite for West Point to secure the funding to upgrade their infrastructure. So we're nearing the completion of the first study, which is focused on the electric supply to West Point. This would be the phase 2 study that would be focused on the supply of natural gas to West Point. The electric is actually provided by Orange and Rockland Utilities. The natural gas is provided by Central Hudson Gas and Electric.
Legislator Trout.
And just give a little background. I'm very familiar with both parts of these studies going on, and there is significant work, expansion, and upgrades being done to virtually every building on West Point, including the housing. And the infrastructure there is quite old. The gas lines that run through the military academy, and that's the only reason why the village was able to get supply of natural gas, are approximately 100 years old for the most part. And there have been over the last several years some very significant leaks that thankfully nobody was injured in, but I believe there was a couple of property losses due to the gas leaks. So
Thank you for your input.
welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Legislator Cheney.
What was the cost of phase 1 and who did it, who performed the work?
The cost for phase 1 is roughly equivalent to this. And it was the consultant that we've retained to work with us is Tetra Tech.
And do they automatically get phase 2, or is that going to be
No, we'll have to issue an RFP.
RFP? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Legislator O'Donnell.
So did the electric piece of this come before the legislature?
Yes.
It did. You?
It's been years. I'm trying to remember how far back.
It was probably authorized a couple of years back.
Yeah.
Right in the height of COVID. So
Yeah, it was right. Yeah.
just as the whole pandemic was unfolding. So
Yeah, I don't remember it. To be honest, I'm surprised it's even like public knowledge. Like that you're talking about natural gas lines to West Point, right? So.
But I'll tell you where it is.
It's inadequate.
Yeah. I'm just surprised at that.
Great. Any other questions or comments? All right, so all in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
And if I'm not mistaken, that is the end of your agenda, ladies and gentlemen. I'll entertain a motion. to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Lori,
Thank you all for attending. We appreciate it.
question.